So as we get into this chapter, we'll talk about how the SOA, which is also called the service-oriented architecture, can be viewed as a philosophical approach to healthy organization of the future. We'll talk about various different types of hardware and software infrastructure, typologies and considerations, and describe cloud computing, what it is and how it's used, and its various varieties of implementation. Also, I want to talk about some metrics that we can use to gauge success of any of our IT systems, and also want to talk about BCP, which is Business Continuity Planning. So let's start with something we talked about a little bit in Chapter 6, which is the service-oriented architecture. This is the idea that organizations that take on this architecture, they focus on primarily the development, use and reuse of code. These are small blocks or modules. They call them services that are used to meet what we need to do within an organization. So if you're talking about HR requirements or payroll or something maybe regarding customer support or product manufacturing or delivery, all of these things require some type of software. And with the service-oriented architecture, our focus is on trying to reuse as much as possible of previous software components or services to build and customize services for those new needs. So it's a very efficient mode of software development and use because we do get to reuse a lot of the code we already developed. And so when you extend this perspective, this SOA perspective to the entire organization, what you're really saying is that your organization is going to try to be as agile and lean as possible in using its resources. So where some organizations may consider developing entirely new systems for every software need they have within the organization, SOA-oriented organizations try to reuse as much as possible of previous development opportunities or previous development projects. We also want to say that these types of organizations are very agile and they are very reactive, almost proactive in the sense that they are examining the market, and because they have smaller investments in technology, they can be a little bit more reactive and quick to make changes to technologies they are using. Make sense? If you invested a lot of money in something, you want to get as much use out of it. But sometimes the market demands that you make changes, stay competitive, or stay on top of some kind of evolving trend amongst competitors within your industry. If you have just completed a large investment in software or hardware technology platform, you're less likely to want to make changes to that. So organizations that take on a SOA type approach have a little bit less investment. They have been efficient, so they're a little bit more likely to be willing to make changes quickly, adopt new technologies or new services. This is interesting because the SOA is focused specifically on IT for customers, end users, software development, information needs, and hardware requirements. But what they're really saying is, these are the things that you need to consider when you're thinking about an SOA approach. You need to think about how your customers will be impacted, how your end users or your employees, if it's going to work for them, or your users are impacted. What are the software development requirements for this type of approach? What are your information needs? And what are the hardware requirements? So in terms of customers, if you're reading the book, this is really, we're looking at page 209 overall or page 197 of this particular chapter. We're talking about customers. The idea here is that your customers should be able to plug and play any type of delivery that you provide them. So if you have a new service that you can offer through this service-oriented architecture, the customer should be able to use it very quickly and easily, seamlessly with other services that they've been using from you. In terms of your end users, they should be able to access your services ubiquitously, which means using any type of technology. So maybe a mobile device, tablet, PC, workstation, whatever you have. They should be able to access the services they need and the information they need regardless of where they are or what type of technology they're using. In terms of software development, again, this talks about the efficiency of code reuse, reusable services, which accelerate systems development, which allows the company to stay agile and reflexive, because if they're reusing code, then again, it's more efficient and investments less going forward and previously. In terms of information needs, obviously information is the lifeblood of an organization, then not only do your end users, your customers, everyone who interfaces with the organization have a different type of information they need, and it needs to be available to everyone who needs it when they need it and in the form they need it. And then, of course, there are hardware requirements for any type of platform you're running, whether it be standard application delivery or service-oriented architecture, cloud computing, you name it. There's hardware requirements, infrastructure that's below those software platforms. So when we say things like infrastructure, the word really means the structure beneath the structure. And there's a pyramid that's shown here. It's also on page 211 that says, when you think about your infrastructure, you have to think about first the people, the business processes, and the customers that will be interfacing with it. Then you have your IT infrastructure, which is the information software, the ERP systems if you have those, the hardware that you use. And then below that you have your public infrastructure, the public internet, your fire, police, telephone network, you name it. A little bit about chapter 2. Not spending a lot of time on this. We're visiting what an ERP is. Basically, it's a holistic approach to application development in use within an organization. It allows you to create these modules that can be used to build different needs in different parts of an organization.